Good evening and thank you for joining us. The government announced the Choi Hung Estate will be redeveloped in 3 phases, with the initial phase of demolition works involving 3 buildings set to begin in 2028. The entire project is predicted to be completed between 2048 and 2049. Timothy Lee has our top story.
The now 62-year-old Choi Hung Estate will soon welcome its long-awaited facelift. This after the Housing Department submitted a paper to the Wong-Tai-sin District Council detailing the housing estate's 3-phase development plan. The first phase, beginning between 2028 and 2029, will include the redevelopment of Pik-hoi House, Kam-pik House, and Typhoon House, and affect some 2,030 tenants. Those affected will be relocated to the new Maetong Estate. During the second phase, between 2035 and 2036, 2,830 tenants of Kamwan House, Hongok House, Kamhon House, and Paksut House will be relocated to some 3,200 units redeveloped during the project's first phase. In the third phase, between 2042 and 2043, a total of 2,650 tenants from Choi King House, Kamwa House, Lokching House, and Chimei House will be moved to some 4,100 units redeveloped during the second phase. The 1,900 final redeveloped units will be available between 2048 and 2049, with the entire project offering 9,200 units. Some residents share their views on the more than 2-decade-long project. This woman was excited about the demolition of the original Choi Hung Estate, calling it old and derelict. While this woman emphasized the importance of convenience for her and her husband, adding the new Maetong Estate is quite far away. Some residents think they will not live to see their redeveloped home. This person said the redevelopment will take too long, stressing she will already be in her 70s by the time of the project's first phase. Meanwhile, the estate's popular basketball court and several car parks will be demolished starting in 2042. Timothy Lee, TVB News.
The European Union has decided to increase tariffs on Chinese-built electric vehicles to as much as 45.3%. Daniel Rao tells us more.
Just over a year after launching an anti-subsidy probe, the European Commission will set out extra tariffs ranging from 7.8% for Tesla to 35.3% for China's SAIC. That's on top of the EU's standard 10% car import duty. The extra tariffs will take effect today. The Commission, which oversees EU trade policy, says tariffs are required to counter what it calls unfair subsidies, including preferential financing and grants for land, batteries and raw materials at below-market prices. It says China's spare production capacity of 3 million EVs per year is twice the size of the EU market. Given 100% tariffs in the United States and Canada, the most obvious outlet for those EVs is Europe. China's Commerce Ministry hit out at the move. It issued a statement saying China does not agree with or accept the ruling. The ministry noted the EU indicated it would continue to negotiate with China on price commitments, adding that Beijing hoped to find a solution acceptable to both sides as soon as possible to avoid escalating trade friction. The China Chamber of Commerce to the EU said it was profoundly disappointed by the protectionist and arbitrary EU measure and was disheartened by lack of substantial progress in negotiations to find an alternative to tariffs. Beijing launched its own probes this year into imports of EU brandy, dairy and pork products in apparent retaliation. Furthermore, it has challenged the EU's provisional measures at the World Trade Organization. Dan Rao, TV News.
Super Typhoon Kong-rey will enter within 800 kilometers of Hong Kong tomorrow morning. This as the Hong Kong Observatory noted the typhoon will not be a threat to the city. Kong-rey will move across the central and southern parts of Taiwan before turning northwards. The super typhoon is expected to edge closer towards northern Fujian province and maintain a distance of over 500 kilometers from Hong Kong in the next 2 to 3 days. Under the influence of another replenishment of the northeast monsoon, the observatory expects strong winds around the Guangdong coastline later this week. It may issue a strong monsoon signal according to the weather condition. With less than a week to go before the U.S. presidential election, the race between Republican nominee Donald Trump and his Democratic rival Kamala Harris remains tighter than ever. A Reuters Ipsos 3-day poll showed Harris holding a 1 percentage point lead over Trump at 44 to 43%. with a margin of error of about 3 percentage points. Trump told his supporters in Florida that he was leading in all 7 battleground states. Harris, in her closing campaign speech in Washington, told her supporters to reject the divisions Trump is trying to sow. Nasri Karim with more.
Donald Trump feeling confident among his supporters in Florida after an eventful and controversial campaign rally in New York's Madison Square Garden. Dismissing a joke by comedian Tony Hinchcliffe that disparaged Puerto Rico and the fact that the New York venue hosted a Nazi gathering in 1939, Trump instead focused on the positives.
I don't think anybody has ever seen anything like what happened the other night at Madison Square Garden. The love in that room, it was breathtaking. It was like a love fest, an absolute love fest, and it was my honor to be involved. You know, they started to say, well, in 1939, the Nazis used Madison Square Garden. But how terrible to say, right?
The White House provided the backdrop for Vice President Kamala Harris's massive rally in Washington, D.C. She spoke from the same spot on the grassy ellipse where, on January 6, 2021, Trump addressed his supporters before they attacked the U.S. Capitol. Trying to win over Republicans and former Trump supporters, Harris urged them to reject the Republican nominee while trying to portray herself as a president for the people.
And the fact that someone disagrees with us does not make them the enemy within. I'll be honest with you, I'm not perfect. I make mistakes. But here's what I promise you. I will always listen to you, even if you don't vote for me. I will always tell you the truth, even if it is difficult to hear.
In Pennsylvania, which offers the most electoral college votes out of all the 7 swing states, reaction to Hinchcliffe's joke that Puerto Rico was a floating island of garbage was mixed.
I was devastated. I'm a Puerto Rican. How you say that my country is trash?
He called the island a floating piece of trash. They don't believe in recycling, and it's all building up. And even my family that lives there right now even said it is getting very trashy here.
Some analysts say Harris and Trump, policy-wise, are similar in many aspects, with economic plans being among the major differences. The national debt stands at almost $36 trillion US.
Trump will cut taxes far more than Harris will. That will aggravate the national debt. It will also cause more stimulus in the economy and might produce more rapid economic growth.
I think both of them don't have a good plan to address the national debt.
Nasri Karim, TVB News.
The United States is planning to restrict American investments in Chinese enterprises, including Hong Kong companies, in sensitive technologies such as artificial intelligence, computer chips, and quantum computing. Some Hong Kong startups believe that, regardless of who takes over the White House next year, these restrictions will remain in place. But they think industries on both sides will still engage in rational cooperation and communication. Trevor Lee filed this report from Silicon Valley in the U.S.
We make sustainable materials, low-carbon materials, and replace plastics.
In the past 6 months, 5 Hong Kong startups have emerged in Silicon Valley, including a medical and environmental technology company co-founded by Eddie Yu. He and the founders of 4 other startups were arranged by the Hong Kong Science and Technology Parks to develop their business in the US. They raised funding and signed business contracts worth more than a total of over $15 million US.
Cosmetic companies would like to do more testing on this.
The Biden administration is set to implement restrictions early next year on investments by American individuals and businesses in Chinese companies dealing with sensitive technologies. Yu believes that American companies will continue to approach international businesses from a commercial perspective. If American investors believe a startup has the potential to become a unicorn, they will be interested in investing, Yu says. As long as investors think that a startup aligns with their financial or philosophical goals, there are many ways to navigate the hurdles. One of the industries targeted by the US is artificial intelligence. Harris Sun, CEO and founder of an AI technology building inspection company from Hong Kong, has also sought investment opportunities in Silicon Valley. He believes American protectionism will not change even with a new president. Sun said there is not much difference in the candidates' general directions. He added that American investors are quite willing to engage with startups from mainland China and Hong Kong and even invest in them. But if they come across two startups with similar objectives, scale, and potential, they may choose not to invest in a Hong Kong or mainland China company due to geopolitical tensions. A Silicon Valley incubation platform that has collaborated with Hong Kong statutory bodies and startups claims that the welcoming attitude of the American tech industry is unlikely to reverse because of government policies.
Like Silicon Valley, which is open-minded and it's very helpful and willing to support the startups, right? So all the corporates, the investors, the area here is already willing to support you, and there's maybe not too much even obstacles to overcome except for the competition with other startups. And you just always have to think about which areas will be more open for you.
China has repeatedly reiterated that the practice of the United States seriously violates the market economy and the principle of fair competition. China urges the United States to stop politicizing, instrumentalizing, and weaponizing trade and technology issues. Trevor Lee, TVB News, California.
The Shenzhou 19 spacecraft carrying 3 astronauts blasted off from a satellite launch center in northwest China at around 4:27 this morning. 6.5 hours later, it docked with the Tiangong space station, where the astronauts were given a warm welcome by the Shenzhou 18 crew. Timothy Lee tells us more.
At around 1:35 a.m., the 3 Shenzhou 19 crew members, Cai Shuzhe, Song Lingdong, and Wang Haoze, took part in a pre-launch ceremony at the Jiuquan Satellite Launch Center.
总指挥长同志
3 astronauts were then escorted to the launch site, where they made their entry into the spacecraft.
3、2、1， 点火！
The Long March 2F rocket carrying the trio blasted off at 4:27 in the morning and separated from its launch escape system 2 minutes later. The boosters and payload fairing broke out the rocket soon after, signaling its departure from the Earth's atmosphere. This as the Shenzhou 18 crew woke up earlier than usual as they eagerly awaited the arrival of their spacebound colleagues.
神舟19号报告，仪表显示团建分离。
10 minutes after liftoff, the Shenzhou 19 spacecraft successfully separated from its rocket. At around 11 a.m., Shenzhou 19 docked with the space station's Tianhe core module, with the entire procedure having taken 6.5 hours. After its docking process was completed, the Shenzhou 18 crew warmly welcomed their fellow astronauts. Both Shenzhou teams embraced each other and gave their greetings. Song Lingdong appeared especially excited being in space for the first time. All 6 reported the success of the mission back to the control center, while the Shenzhou 19 crew were greeted with a welcoming sign inside the module. Ye Guangfu, the head of the Shenzhou 18 mission, said he was emotional about the arrival of his successors at the space station, while members of the newly arrived crew share some of their own thoughts. Shenzhou 19 commander Cai Shuzhe noted the great feeling of being welcomed in space and described the warmth he felt in the module. Song Lingdong, who waited to meet the Shenzhou 18 crew in space for half a year, emphasized his confidence in completing the mission. Wang Haoze, meanwhile, was touched to meet the Shenzhou 18 crew in real life. The 6 astronauts will stay together in the module for 5 days before the Shenzhou 18 crew returns to Earth next Monday. Timothy Lee, TVB News.
Welcome back. Financial Secretary Paul Chan, who is on a visit to Saudi Arabia, celebrated the historic launch of the Al Balad CSOP Exchange Traded Fund. He said the newly listed ETF will strengthen financial ties between Hong Kong and Saudi Arabia. Chan also attended the 8th Annual Future Investment Initiative Summit and pointed out that countries in the Global South have enormous potential in digitalization and environmental protection. Danny Zhou reports.
Saudi Arabia's first exchange-traded fund, or ETF, that tracks Hong Kong-listed equities, made a winning debut on the Saudi Stock Exchange today. The fund's initial size was about $1.3 billion, making it the largest ETF in the Middle East. Financial Secretary Paul Chan called the listing a milestone. He said the ETF opens a door for Saudi and other Middle East investors to buy into high-growth sectors in Hong Kong and China, adding that he's convinced it will inspire a deeper, more connected and win-win collaboration.
It will help diversify Hong Kong's sources of capital, enhance our stock market's liquidity, and reinforce our role as a hub in connecting international financial institutions with their target markets.
Earlier, on Tuesday, over 7,000 global political and financial leaders converged on Riyadh for this year's Future Investment Initiative Summit. The event was hosted by Saudi Arabia's Sovereign Wealth Fund. Addressing the panel discussion on economic development, Chan noted the Global South, which represents emerging markets in developing countries, has significant growth potential in digitalization and environmental protection. The finance chief said the Hong Kong Monetary Authority has been connecting with the central banks of many Global South countries via the cross-border network of digital currency. The whole idea is to allow countries to trade in their local currencies and apply digitalization for faster, cheaper and safer payments and transactions. Chan said this method should be popularized as it could boost trading confidence. Following the speech, Chan attended a Cathay Pacific Airways cocktail reception where he spearheaded a promotional campaign targeting the business community and aviation industry. He witnessed the signing of a memorandum of understanding between the Hong Kong Science Park and the Saudi Arabian investment firm. And the Hong Kong Stock Exchange also planned to host breakfast meetings in Saudi Arabia to promote the advantages of the city. Danny Zhou, TVB News.
A 25-year-old Indonesian domestic helper was found dead at Waterfall Bay Park in Pak Fu Lam. A non-Chinese Hong Kong ID card holder and his local wife are in custody for further investigation. A 34-year-old British man was arrested and taken to the Waterfall Bay Park this afternoon as part of the investigation. Sources say the man had an extramarital affair with the Indonesian helper. Sources say someone said the pair met up at the park on Sunday night, and one of them asked to break up. The other then became agitated and suddenly jumped off the waterfall. An individual went to the bottom of the waterfall and, thinking the victim was dead, fled the scene without calling the police. A resident found the woman floating in the water and called the police. The police said the deceased drowned after her head was hit by a hard object. University research shows that optimal control of diabetes reduced the risk of colorectal cancer and liver cancer by 28% and 30% respectively. Samantha Lee tells us more.
The Medical School of the University of Hong Kong conducted 2 territory-wide studies using clinical data from the Hospital Authority. Of more than 88,000 patients newly identified with diabetes, data taken from 2005 to 2013 revealed 1.4% developed colorectal cancer. Of more than 146,000 diabetes patients identified from 2001 to 2016, 0.8% developed liver cancer.
With diabetes, when they have a high sugar level, this high sugar level creates an environment that is very favorable to cancer cells. So cancer cells, when they have a lot of sugar around them, in short, they are able to grow faster.
The findings also showed that patients with optimal control of diabetes, which means glycated hemoglobin or HbA1c lower than 7%, have a lower risk of developing colorectal cancer and liver cancer by 28% and 30% respectively. This data was taken from studying over 140,000 patients with diabetes over 17 years.
But it's not surprising that many patients may not be aware even among them what the HbA1c or latest blood test is. So basically, I think they should be encouraged to inquire from their clinicians or treating doctors the HbA1c level and try to aim at HbA1c less than 7% as their target, not just to prevent heart disease, stroke, eyes getting a problem or kidneys getting worse, but also to prevent the risk of developing cancer.
Doctors also recommended patients with diabetes discuss with their doctors how to manage the risk of potential cancers. Samantha Lee, TVB News.
And that's the news. Thank you for watching.